Hello, I'm Mike Sandone from North America Overland, and today I'd like to show you this 1985 Land Rover 110 that we just completed a full restoration on. Now this Land Rover got what we call our NAO Expedition package. So with this package, the Land Rover gets restored to the same standard as our normal full restorations, but the restoration is done with an off-road use in mind. So many parts are installed during the restoration to make it perform and hold up better in an off-road environment. So the first thing that we did was we did a complete teardown on the vehicle. Everything got removed. Not only did we galvanize the frame, we also galvanized every steel component under the body of the vehicle. And this is really important on these vehicles because anywhere where the steel touches the aluminum, there's potential for corrosion. And by galvanizing the parts, it eliminates this possibility by isolating the two metals with a layer of zinc. So once the frame was back from galvanizing, we began to assemble the rolling chassis. So the first thing was axles. For the rear axle, we sourced a new genuine Land Rover 110 rear axle. Now this is the latest version of the 110 axle that replaced the Salisbury, and this was first designed and tested in the Land Rover Wolf vehicles. It's essentially a heavy-duty Rover type axle with a stronger axle housing and a 4-pin differential. We sourced a good used front axle from a later model Defender. And we sourced the later axle because these had 24 spline axles instead of the 10 spline axles that the 1985 came with originally. Since the front axle was a used unit, it was completely rebuilt with all new bearings, the swivel housings were rebuilt, and all new seals were added. Next, we replaced all of the suspension bushings with genuine Land Rover rubber bushings. So all of the old bushings were pressed out of the control arms and the panhard rod, and new bushings were pressed in. For springs, we went with genuine Land Rover heavy-duty springs. Now these springs keep the vehicle at its stock ride height, but compensate for the extra weight that we'll be adding to the vehicle. We then added Koni heavy track shocks, and then the rolling chassis was complete. While the rolling chassis was being assembled, we began to work on the body. The bulkhead was sandblasted to bare metal. Some rust was found in the footwells, but this was easily taken care of by welding in some new galvanized footwells. All the other body panels were stripped to bare aluminum and assessed for corrosion. Unfortunately, we did find some corrosion in the rear tub at the bottom of the quarter panels. So instead of leaving this corrosion in place on the rear tub, we opted to actually replace the entire rear tub with a new genuine Land Rover unit. Unfortunately, corrosion was also found on the doors and front outer fenders, so these units were replaced as well. The front doors were replaced with new genuine Land Rover door shells, and the rear door was replaced with the all-steel 2002 and up door that is much stronger than the door that originally came on this 1985. Once all the new body panels arrived, and the used body panels were stripped to bare aluminum, we began to paint the body. The body panels were painted in NAO Expedition Matte Tan. Now, when we paint these vehicles, both sides of every body panel is painted for corrosion protection. The first part to come back from paint was the bulkhead, and we installed a new wiring harness and converted it to left-hand drive. Many of the dash components, like the upper dash, were brittle and cracked, so those got replaced as well. We installed a set of VDO gauges in the dash, which are much more accurate than the original gauges that came with the Land Rover. We then installed the bulkhead and rear tub on the frame and began to assemble the body. We installed some windows in the rear side panels to give some extra visibility and ventilation. This Land Rover originally had a very utilitarian interior, so we actually wanted to upgrade that by going with a newer roof that had the Alpine windows and a sunroof. We replaced the sunroof with a new genuine Land Rover sunroof. The older style sunroofs are typically known to leak, especially when the gasket gets hard from age. Now this Land Rover originally had a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated diesel engine. Now these engines aren't really powerful enough to propel the Land Rover down the highway system here in the United States. So we opted to change out the engine for a later Land Rover 300 TDI 2.5-liter turbo diesel. Now this engine produces about 115 horsepower and about 200 foot-pounds of torque. The engine was rebuilt at our local machine shop to our specs. So not only was the bottom end and head of this 300 TDI completely rebuilt, we also replaced the injection pump and injectors. We also installed a variable vane turbo to give the engine a slight horsepower increase. We mated the engine to an R380 5-speed transmission that was built by Ashcroft in the UK. Now this transmission got their high-ratio 5th gear upgrade and also bigger bearings. Now I really like this high-ratio 5th gear because it lowers the RPMs of the engine at highway speed. The transfer case was also rebuilt by Ashcroft and had their heavy-duty cross pin installed. We installed all new ancillaries for the motor, including the water pump, alternator, all the hoses, the radiator, and the intercooler. Once we installed some new drive shafts, the drivetrain was completely rebuilt. On the interior, we added some really heavy rubber matting, and this really helps to deaden the sound of the diesel engine. We also installed some genuine Land Rover cloth seats that were the later type that were installed on the latest model Puma Land Rovers. The interior also got a new headliner from front to back with the new style interior lights. Once the body and drivetrain were complete, we began to add some off-road parts. So this includes a heavy-duty bumper and winch, a brush guard, rock sliders, rear bumperettes, and heavy-duty Wolf wheels with Goodyear Duratrack tires. The finished product is a like-new Defender. Every single part on this Land Rover got replaced or restored. There's not a single original part that went back on this vehicle as is. So this means that the entire underside of the vehicle is galvanized. The body is painted both sides in Expedition Matte Tan. All the wiring has been replaced. The entire fuel system has been replaced. The interior is completely new. This is basically as close as you can get to a brand new Defender here in the United States.